will be better off, and the consumer will be better off if you avoid foreclosure.
Right.
And everybody takes a haircut. You know, the bank has to lose a little bit of money on what they were expecting on principal and interest. On the other hand, the homeowner, if they make this agreement with the bank, they've got to agree that when prices start going up again, they give up a little bit of equity to repay the bank. But either way, everybody's better off, including the community, if people stay in their homes.
Right.
So there are a whole bunch of steps. There are a whole bunch of steps that we've been taking, and we're starting to see improvements in the housing market. We're starting to see slight improvements in some of these other areas.
Like Dayton, Ohio.
This was a big economic problem that we had. Right? This is like nothing that we've seen since the Great Depression. And as I said, New Mexico's been fortunate, partly because of some good administration from the New Mexican government, but also
hear that, Ohio?
because
Give us some help. Dayton, Ohio.
At the same pace, it did not have some of the same problems as some other states.
Like Dayton, Ohio.
But for the country as a whole, we took a big hit. I mean, Wall Street just was gambling with a lot of people's money. And they were taking risks they should have never taken. So we've seen trillions of dollars of wealth removed, and it's going to take some time to catch up. And a lot of people are still paying off their credit cards, and a lot of people are trying to get out from under the debts that they had accumulated when times were better. And so we're going to have to set what I'm calling a new foundation for growth, where people are less reliant on debt, they're living more within their means, businesses are engaging in more sensible business practices, they're investing in the future and the long term and not short-term profits. We are focusing on clean energy, we're reforming our healthcare system, we are boosting our education system to produce more engineers and more scientists, and retraining our workers so that we've got the most productive workers in the world. That's the strategy that we're going to be pursuing in the months and years to come. All right.
Thank you, Mr. President.
It's the guy's turn. It's the guy's turn. Let me go up here because I don't want folks up here feeling neglected. That gentleman way up there, right in the corner, way up there. Oh, look at that guy. He's all standing right in front of him.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Phil Sutherland out of Berlin, New Mexico, and I'm just asking that, you're saying all these wonderful things, and it's really good to hear this, but whenever you say that we've got to get laws passed or the help to the people that we need, we chuckle about it having to go through Congress. Well, can you break those lines of bipartisanship and get these laws and this help that we need to us, the people?
Now.
Well, first of all, I think it's very important to understand that since I came into office, I have said to my Republican friends in Congress, I want to work with you. I've had them over to the White House more than they were over in the White House during the Bush administration. That's true. We have consulted with them extensively. Now, there have been on two big issues some very fundamental disagreements with the Republican Party, and I don't doubt their sincerity. They just have a different view.
Right.
One is on the stimulus package, on the Recovery Act. There were people who said we should not have government spend that much, especially when we're inheriting a $1.3 trillion deficit from the previous administration. And we've already spent money on the TARP program and shoring up the banks, etc. We shouldn't do this. There are some people who made that argument. Now, I will tell you that every serious Democratic and Republican, conservative and liberal economist that I spoke to believed very strongly that we needed a recovery package because what was happening was consumers, they had pulled back. People weren't shopping as much because they were worried about the state of the economy and their debts had gotten too high.
Yep, they had no money.
Businesses were pulling back. And so what you had was a crisis in demand where if everybody pulls back at the same time, nobody's going shopping. If nobody's going shopping, then this young lady with her store, she doesn't have money. She may have to lay off a worker, which means that worker is now spending less, which means they're not buying groceries, and now somebody else's store shuts down. You start getting into a vicious cycle
Trickle.
where everybody's pulling back all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
In that circumstance, the only person or the only entity that can fill the gap is the government. And so that's why we passed the Recovery Act. It's not because we're not worried about deficits. It's because if we didn't do anything, this economy could have really gone into a tailspin. But I make that point only to say there's some Republicans who just philosophically were opposed to the idea of this recovery package. I have to say they weren't as worried when the previous administration was running up and doubling our national debt, but...
Yep, thank you for passing that, Mr. President. Thank you.
But having said that, you know, it's entirely legitimate for that's part of what our democracy is about, to disagree with us on it. They also disagreed on our budget because they don't believe that we should, for example, reform our healthcare system in a way that includes more people. They think that the free market can solve the problem. Now, I'm a strong believer in the free market, but I think that when it comes to healthcare, the free market only takes you so far. If
Right.
your child is sick and you don't have health insurance, in a country this wealthy, we should be able to make sure that your child is cared for.
Right. And adults, though, too. Adults, too.
So, and I actually think that long term we'll spend less money when we do that.
Right. Preventative
Because
maintenance.
other countries like France and
England.
Japan and a whole host of other countries, they spend less a percentage of their GDP on healthcare than we do. We spend more per capita than any nation on earth, but we still have 45 million people uninsured. And in some cases, we've got worse outcomes. We've got higher infant mortality rates. We've got higher rates of some deadly diseases. That doesn't make sense. But, again, there's a philosophical difference. Having said all that, on this credit card bill, when it passed in the House, we actually got 100 Republican votes. When on our children's health insurance bill, we got some Republican votes. So the media likes to focus on where we disagree. They don't tend to focus on the areas where we are actually working together. And I think that we'll see more and more agreement over time as the Republican Party starts to realize that the American people want results right now. They don't want bickering.
Right.
And when they realize that, they'll have an open, outstretched hand for me.
Right.
All right?
We work together, we'll
Okay.
rebuild this country. Working together.
I hate to do this, but I've only got time for one question. One more question.
And I've only got 1.5 minutes left.
It's gotta be a young lady. All the guys sit down. Everybody was advocating for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, President Obama. My name is Eliza Sultan. I work for Congressman Ben Lujan. The limits on earnings for people on Social Security disability are so low that it discourages people from working. For those who are hoping to be self-supporting and get off Social Security disability like myself, would you consider raising the earning limit?
You know, I think it's something that we should look at carefully. We've got a wonderful advisory group relating to people with disabilities and how we expand opportunity. And let's examine what we can do. Now, I will tell you that Social Security disability has gone up significantly during this recession. Some of you may have read in the last couple of days that the Social Security Trust Fund is worse off now because of the recession than it was we were already having some issues with Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to have to do some significant reforms of Social Security. So in principle, the answer